Hello, everyone. A couple of you have reached out to me asking questions regarding how we were able to move the path once the path for the camera once it was laid out. So how were we able to turn all the keyframes that we had created on the path um, on the plane along with everything else that we rotated. And that was part of the reason why I told you guys to pay close attention to how we were using null objects. Null objects, as you know, are helpers that allow you to control the transformation values of layers as if, think of them as if you had pancaked the layers, or as if you had grouped them, or as if you had precomposed them, and it will retain the whatever changes you have made, whatever keyframes you have made, will obey the rotation or changes that are being dictated by the null object as the parent. So how does that work? Well, the first thing we did is with the same as what you're looking at now is the composition as we had worked in class. I have already resized the composition to 1280 by 720. And the reason for that is because I do this before I create the cameras. And the reason for that is because the cameras, once created, they will take on the dimensions of whatever screen you're working on. So in this case, 1280 by 720 is the actual visual area that I want for my camera. And we had already changed that by this point in class. So what I'm going to do at this point is I am going to turn all my layers into 3D layers by activating their switch. And then I am going to go into Layer, New, Camera. Now this camera, as we did in class, is a one node camera and it's 24 millimeters. So I'm going to keep it as is. At 24 millimeters is a pretty wide angle lens, and that allows me to have more visibility besides the road in front of me to have some point of reference in the horizon. I want to see some of the green around the camera. So that's why we chose a wide angle lens. So I'll click OK on that. And what I'm going to do at this point is I am going to call the position value for that camera by pressing the letter P. I'll select the position label so that it is there where I will paste the path that I will be bringing in from Illustrator. And then I'll go into the Illustrator. I'll switch to Illustrator, to the Illustrator file. I'll select the middle of the road line, the one with the yellow dashed line. And I'll go ahead and copy that, Control C or Command C on the Mac, switch back to After Effects, and then I will paste it into the position. So make sure that the position transformation label is clicked so that it is there where you will apply this path. I'll paste Control V or Command V on the Mac, and then the layer will the position transformation will receive the keyframes that come from that path. Now, if I switch my view to the front view, then I'll see that the path has been laid out and it goes right along the road, which is exactly what I needed it to do. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to expand these keyframes. So notice that they all are selected at this point. They're all highlighted. They're blue. So if I click on the last one and press the Alt key first or the Option key on the Mac, and then click and drag the last one, they will expand in proportion to where they were originally laid out. So I'm going to expand them to about 5 seconds, let's say. And that is the length of the change of the motion of the camera. As I scrub, you'll see that the camera follows the path. So now that that is done, what I'm going to do at this point is notice that the keyframes have been laid out. Everything is set. I am going to now create a new null object. Now this null object is invisible and it only works as a helper to affect transformations across a series of layers without them changing on their own. And what that means is they will not obey their own anchor points for changes. They will respond to whatever the parent is doing. And in this case, the parent will be the null object. So before I do anything else, I need to turn that null object into a 3D object because I will be rotating all of this in 3D space. And then I'll select all of the layers below the null object, and I will make them children of the null object. So now, whatever I do to the null object, all of the layers will obey, along with whatever transformations have been applied to any of those children. In this case, the camera already has a path that has been created. So once I go into the null object and I call its rotation value, when I start rotating that null object, what's going to happen is that everything that has been made a child of that null object, and all of their respective keyframes will obey whatever change I am requesting of the null object. So in this case, I rotated it to negative 90 or 270 degrees, depending on how you're looking at the world. If I say negative 90, basically I end up with the exact same setup. Orientation only counts from 0 through 359, 360 being one rotation in the orientation. And that basically has rotated the entire world. At this point, I don't need the null object anymore. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select all of the layers once again and remove the parenting from them. So I'll change from null one to none so that they don't have a parent anymore. And now whatever I apply to any of these layers will be applied to the layer specifically, and it will be obeyed by that layer only without any interaction with the null object. So since we don't need the null object anymore, I'll go ahead and make it a shy layer and I'll hide it. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to rotate the camera. So I'll call its rotation value, and I will change its orientation from 270 to 0 so that the camera is now looking even on the plane field of whatever artwork I have created, or whatever artwork I have around it. In this case, basically just following the path as if we were looking at the road, not from the top, but let's think of it as if we were in front of a car and we were looking towards the horizon, or towards the front, what's in front of us on the road. So what I'm going to do it now to be able to see all that, so I'm going to elevate the camera slightly on the y-axis, and I do that by calling its position value, making sure that my time marker is on top of one of the keyframes. It doesn't matter which one, but as long as it's in one of the keyframes, and on top of one of the keyframes, and then when I click on the position label, they'll get selected, time marker on top of one of the keyframes, and then I can go ahead and transform the y-axis. Now what happens is that if I am not in one of the keyframes, I will be asking the path to generate a new keyframe, and that will be affecting that one keyframe alone. But if I am on top of one of my keyframes and all of my keyframes are selected, then the transformation will apply across all of the keyframes that are selected. In this case, all 4 keyframes obey that, and that's why you see the path being elevated from the ground. So now that I've done that, let me go ahead and switch my view from front to camera, and you'll notice that I should be able to at this point see from front to camera 1, I should be able to start seeing my path below it. Okay, and as you notice, my camera is sort of following my animation in reverse of what we did in class, but it is following the path. So what we're going to do at this point is I am going to go ahead, let me actually go ahead and select the camera and ask it to follow the path. So I'll say, with the camera selected, I'll go Layer, Transform, Auto Orient, Orient Along Path, and click OK. Now my camera should follow the path, as you guys can see. Now obviously in my rendering of the world, it's slightly different than yours. It's because my 3D rendering engine is using ray trace render as opposed to the regular render that we worked with in class. So let me switch that to classic 3D, and then I should be back to the normal view that you guys had in class. And I am following the path the same way that we had in class. So that is how we were able to affect the rotation of the path once we had created the animation. Basically parenting that layer, that camera, and everything else that we wanted to rotate to a null object, then changing the rotation through the null object, and then removing the parenting from all the layers once we got the camera position to be where we wanted it to be. So I hope this short video helps. Some of you have been asking about it because you were planning to do things like this in your final projects. So I hope this helps. I'm looking forward to seeing those animations. Bye-bye.